There we go. Great. So recording is underway. We will be posting this up on one of the regional YouTube sites afterwards. So if you find anything interesting in today's presentation, I hope that you share it with your friends and colleagues and allow them to be able to join in and partake in the event today that we're going to have. So we're going to go ahead and run through a little bit of some business activities here at the beginning of this, and then I want to be able to introduce your post officers and introduce a little bit about some of the things, exciting things that we have scheduled for the UK Post over the remainder of the year. So we'll share the program with you in a little bit more details. So let's go ahead and we'll get going. So welcome, and this is an introduction, I guess maybe a reintroduction to the UK SAME Post. It's been for several of you, I know, were members of the organization and have maybe wondered what happened and where did it go. As with everything in life, we all professionally get busy, and I just want to say we're back, and we've got, I think, what I hope you will find to be a very robust program through the rest of the year, and we'll be sharing that in just a moment. So a little bit about who I am, and some of you know who I am. So if you don't know who I am now your post president for the UK Post. Not new to SAME, not new to the UK Post itself, and not new to Europe. So I currently, in my day job, sit as the director for European Defense and Security for Jacobs. But in my fly-by-night job, I currently serve as the SAME regional vice president for Europe, and more recently, in about the February timeframe, decided to come over and help get the UK Post reinvigorated, re-energized, and refocused. And look forward to getting to meet those of you who I've not met yet, and share your ideas and share fellowship and get an understanding of the things that you want to see this post do. I want to introduce to you then also the rest of the rest of the slate of the UK Post officers. Again, many of these people you'll know, maybe some of them are new, and I am absolutely looking forward to the first opportunity we've got to do some face-to-face interactions, so we all have a chance to meet and start to begin some development of some greater networks. So our vice president for civilian, former past president of the UK Post and has been actively involved for years, is Kev Jolly. So Kevin, thanks. Great to have you on the team. Kevin's with Tetra Tech, and he'll be serving as your civilian vice president. We've added a new post officer position to the roster this year. This is Major Kirk Hull, who's out at RAF Croton as the base civil engineer and C squadron commander there. Kirk comes to us and is going to help out by helping to really ensure that we've got a vibrant focus within the organization on our military and government civilian membership across the U.S. Air Force, the U.S. visiting forces here in the U.K., but then also increasing level of outreach and partnership with the Royal Engineers and others within MOD, and we'll touch on what I think is going to be a very exciting event later in the calendar, and we'll touch on that. So we're happy to have Major Hull joining the team as we go through the rest of this year. Our secretary is Tom Heesum from Mott MacDonald. Tom also is not new to the organization. He's been involved with it right from the beginning. For those of you that aren't aware of this, I think 6 years ago or so, maybe 7 or 8, Tom had no idea what SAME is. Probably wasn't even an acronym that he was aware of. But this past year, he's been part of the leadership development program cohort. And in the next few weeks, he'll be wrapping that up and graduating from that leadership program at the Joint Engineering Training Conference in Orlando, Florida next month. So Tom, thank you for all your volunteer work, leadership, and meticulous management of the post over the last year. So looking forward to seeing you graduate next month at JETSI in the cohort. Our treasurer is Marco Furlan. Marco is currently up at RAF Mildenhall and has been supporting us in the treasurer role, and happy to have him in that role as well. And then finally, but not least, but his membership, and that's Matt Scribner. Matt has also been a vibrant member of this post ever since he arrived in the UK, and has been was active, very active in the SAME even before he showed up here. So he's been very active in the region for some time. And Matt, we're happy to have you continuing your role in membership as we go through the rest of this year. I think it's appropriate at this time that I do throw out, as all volunteer organizations, we have a somewhat continuous look for other volunteers, other individuals who are interested in spending a little bit of time to help to develop the professional engineering, professional technical capabilities, and just the overall understanding of those around them. And we certainly are looking for that now. So we are looking for someone to come in and help out in our programs section. Programs, I think, are the most important part of any post. It's what makes it vibrant or not. And therefore, definitely looking for someone that could come in and assist in programs and help them to herd the cats, as it were. We're also looking for someone to take on the role of communications. I think that's equally important, especially with the volunteer organization, of making sure that all of us that lead very busy professional lives know exactly what's going on, and we know where to go getting information. So definitely looking for a couple people to come in and fill those roles. We are looking to bring someone in to start in the enlisted liaison role, and that's being finalized. So I look forward to introducing that individual on one of our future meetings. And always can look for someone who's interested to come in and step in as a volunteer in what I call micro volunteering. So you don't have to buy all in and think that this is going to be something that's that's going to consume hours and hours of your life. Even 15, 20 minutes a week can help out. Or if you just want to help out on one of the exciting programs, events that we're going to show in just a moment, in just one of those, that helps out the team that you see here. So thank you again to all of our post officers. Definitely looking forward to working with you through the rest of the year. All right, this is the important bit. This is the 2024 program. So we are in the month of April. And we threw this one together as a virtual only because we wanted to get the ball rolling and make sure that all of you out there were aware that the UK post didn't go away. It's back, and we're hoping that it will be better than ever. We have an ambitious program that's been put together. I will say here at the onset that the dates that you see are likely to shift. I did learn last week from the 100th Civil Engineer Squadron that the dates that are shown there happen to overlap their training days, both for the RAF Mildenhall and RAF Lakenheath engineers. So we may be looking at likely adjusting those while we also try to deconflict from events that are taking place elsewhere across the region at our sister posts, either in Kaiserslautern or at Rhein-Main. But the dates are generally going to be around the same. And you can see a pretty robust activities here. As I came in as the post president, my focus this year, at least in the program, was we were going to focus it in 3 different lines of effort. One of those is going to be pure professional development for each of us that are, whether you're an engineer or not is not relevant, but we all are operating the architecture, engineering, and construction arena. We're either a consultant or a contractor, or we interface with them. So true, pure professional development to help each of us upskill ourselves in a very, what is a very vibrant profession. So that was one line of effort. The other one was going to be around industry government engagement. And so this was going to be very much focused on bringing our partners in government, our various partners in industry, whether you're a consultant or a contractor, bringing us all together. There's a lot of interface that needs to be done, that should be done. We're operating in the defense and the security arena, and it's really important that we're all harmonized and really kind of working towards the same mission set. So industry government engagement was the other one. And then finally, I'll just put out there is networking and the social interface. I think that's a very important element of our profession. Again, whether you're in the construction arena, or you're in the engineering consultancy arena, or you're in government, industry, doesn't matter. Networking, socialization, and understanding of other people's perspectives and the diversity that each of us brings in, I think is vitally important for all of us as well. So those are the 3 lines of effort. We're going to be professional development, industry government engagement, networking, and social. And so hopefully you'll see that reflected through the different events that we have planned out. And you'll see that many of these going forward are going to be hybrid. So we'll have a physical location set for them, either Cambridge, down in London, or potentially up at one of the installations in Suffolk. And then we will be able to broadcast these as well. So those of you that aren't able to make it in person will certainly be able to partake of the dialogue through virtual means. One event that I do want to call your attention to, because I'm very excited about it, and there is going to be an ask going out to my sustaining member partners, hopefully by email later today, is the 14 November event. This is what I hope will become an annual event that's going to be in the calendar and will be very exciting for all of us. This is going to be a joint professional development event between the Society of American Military Engineers and the Institution of Royal Engineers. Right now, it is planned and intended to be held at the Institution of Civil Engineers in Westminster. And it'll be in the evening. And the topic is going to be on engineering and resilience in military airfields. So we're very excited about this. We have the presenters lined up. And for those of you that are in sustaining member positions, you'll be getting an email from me later today to talk about some of the financial aspects of that. So definitely looking forward to sharing more with all of you about that very exciting event that will be taking place in November. So hopefully something there has piqued your interest. It certainly has mine. I think it's going to be a very, very good, vibrant year. And I'm absolutely looking forward to being able to do one of these in person and start to see and meet all of you who I've not met yet. Right. Talk a little bit about treasurers. Is Marco on the call today? All right. So it doesn't look like Marco's on. I think the key takeaway here is we're not destitute, so that's a good thing. Although not a lot of activity within the post, we do have finances there. Typically, how this works for a post is you do receive some level of financial input from national, just based off of membership. So again, the importance of the program, and that it allows us to more people that are members of the post, the more portion of finances we do see that come across into our bank account. The other area comes through events, so that could be sponsorships for various in-person events, and those of us that are in sustaining member firms are somewhat used to that. So I will be those of you that are in the leadership roles within the sustaining member firms. Again, you'll begin seeing emails from me requesting ideas and thoughts about how you might be able to, especially in the coming fiscal year, be able to support the post across various events. And then the third, it can be through different types of fundraising activities. I've got an idea for one of those. We'll be looking to share some of that information with you, and we'll see how that plays forward going forward. But the bottom line is we're not destitute. No need for the tin cup. But we won't be going out to buy a Range Rover anytime soon. On membership, Matt, I know you're on. If you're able to maybe unmute yourself, if that works, and maybe if you want to talk a little bit about our membership complexion and some of the things that maybe you're thinking about doing going forward with the membership.
All right, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Going to keep this short and sweet. Good afternoon, everybody. As you can see, we have 76 current members. Several individuals are in their grace period and lapsed. If you know somebody who would like to join, or if you know somebody that might have been a former member, please encourage them. We're starting to send out emails to remind folks, share the schedule of all the interesting events that Chris was talking about earlier, as well as try to express our benefit to everybody. If you aren't currently a member, please let me know, or go to same.org, and there should be an option to join on the top. Please let me know if you have any questions or concerns. I would also like to congratulate and thank our sustaining members. There's 9 up there at the moment. We do have 2 that are in the, or I'm sorry, 1 that's in the grace period and 2 that are lapsed, including the DIO. So we'll work with them to see if they are still interested in, as an organization, having a membership, which actually comes with individual membership benefits, as in they would be able to pay for their individuals within their organization's membership for the year. So that doesn't have to fall on the individual to do. So please, if you have any questions about membership, I will make myself available. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for that, Matt, and thank you, individual members that are out there. Thank you for being a member, an active member of SAME and the UK Post, and sticking with us, and for all the sustaining members that you see listed there. I know there's a couple of others that are in grace period, and there's a couple of others that I've spoken with that are the checks in the mail. They're working the paperwork. So very excited to have all of these sustaining members that are shown and listed here. Between if this is, as it's been said numerous times, at least at the national level, and kind of drilled into us at the region level, SAME is a member-driven organization. If it didn't have the members, it wouldn't exist. Another thing that was passed to me, and I'm going to call out, because I think I saw Olivia Furlan come on the call today, so I'm going to hat tip her for this little piece of information she passed to me from a former colleague in SAME. Was that is, if you look through the membership and what it takes to be a member, you don't have to be American, you don't have to be in the military, and you don't have to be an engineer to be a member of SAME. You just need to be interested in participating actively in the architectural engineering and consultancy arena and construction arena, focused on national defense and the development of built and natural infrastructure to support that. So that's all it takes. We clearly have a mixed U.S. and U.K. membership here with the U.K. Post, and again, I think that's what makes this post unique, and certainly what makes it a very vibrant organization. All right, I think we might be coming to the end. Yeah, we're getting towards the end here on the business side of this, and then we're going to turn it over to what all of you have showed up to today, which is the discussion that will be provided about the use of generative AI. One of the last little pieces of business I'll ask is, if you haven't done it yet, please go out and take the UK Post membership survey. This was blasted out to everyone. It's also, I believe, parked out on our SAME regional LinkedIn site, which, if you see down at the bottom, you'll see the tag there for SAME Europe region. We are out on LinkedIn. All the events that will take place throughout the rest of the year will be posted there. They'll get sent out by email. But please go take this membership survey. It's 2 minutes maybe to knock it out. This is what's going to be helpful for those of us that are involved in setting the program and executing it through the rest of this year. So really could use your input. That's just going to help us make it a more useful program for each of you, and make sure that you want to come back for more and participate. All right, get the system here. Right, so we are at the end now of our business piece of this. Kevin, I would like to invite you, please, sir, to come online and camera, and if you wouldn't mind, provide introduction for our guest speaker as I work the slides here and get us set up for the next presentation.
Yeah, brilliant. Thanks, Chris. So yeah, to the headline act. So I won't occupy the stage any longer need to. So just like to introduce Alex Granger. So Alex is the director and head of geospatial for Tetra Tech. He chairs Tetra Tech's digital technology group, leading strategy and implementation of innovation designs digital solutions for clients across multiple sectors. Alex also leads our geospatial practice, capturing, processing and analysing complex spatially referenced data for clients in a variety of sectors. So without further ado, Alex, can we hand over to you for the presentation, please? Alex, have you got comms?
This may be the first test of AI right here. All right, let's. I'm going to stop share because I need to see my full screen here. So we'll do a quick diagnostic and see if we can try to figure out why.
Yeah,
Alex
maybe
can't.
make Alex a presenter.
Okay. There we go.
Is that any better, Alex? Do you want to hop out and hop back in? Cheers. We'll keep saying keep the floor warm.
Yeah.
Just whilst I'll just reinforce some of the stuff you said earlier, Chris, about SME. Obviously, 6 years in now. I'm not American. I'm not military. And I'm not engineer. But the stuff that I've actually got out of this and went from, like say, from being collared in Lake and Heath to support the charter shipping back in 2018, absolutely loved it. So yeah, you definitely don't need to have that background to get benefits from sailing.
Yeah, no, that's great to hear, and I would just call out again the fact that we've got Tom in the leadership development program, and Tom was a first for the program, first from the UK, and has been doing a fabulous job in that. All right, Alex, let's do a comms check. Are you back online here?
I think that's working. Is that?
There we go. Yeah. So that was the first test of the day. I'm going to go off camera. I will share the screen, sir, and we'll turn the virtual floor over to you.
Thank you very much, and thanks very much for the introduction, Kevin and Chris, and pleasure to be speaking to you all today. I'm glad that the introduction included that you didn't have to be American, part of the military, or an engineer, as I am none of those things. But yeah, so as Kevin said, I'm a head of geospatial here at Tech in the UK. And also have a real focus on developing technology and innovation for our clients right across the globe, really, as part of a global community. Like a lot of large organizations, one of the things that we wrestle with is how do we take that global capability that we develop and bring that to life and be able to deliver it for local customers and clients. And so what we've done is we've created something that we call the Tech Delta. And the idea is that it's a live ecosystem of digital technology that we're able to bring to life. So that's one of the things that I'll cover with you guys today. Just go to the next slide, please, Chris. So just running through the items that we'll cover. So just thought it'd be useful to cover some fundamentals of AI and some of the jargon, talk through some of the terminology, then go into some of the ethical considerations of AI and how we implement it within our respective organizations, talk through some of the examples of AI tools and AI models that we have at Tetra Tech, and then talk, sort of maybe start some thoughts and provoke some ideas for the practical AI applications that we see as a community amongst ourselves here, and then go into a Q&A where we can get into more of a conversational style to talk through some of those ideas. So into the next slide, please, Chris. So some of the terminology that people will have heard of late to do with artificial intelligence. So first and foremost, what is AI? So it's a program that can sense, reason, act, and adapt. So it goes a little bit above and beyond just using algorithms that we see in everyday life for various programs, and actually can start to make decisions and reason, as opposed to just churn out based on logic of A plus B equals C kind of routine. Machine learning, people will have heard this a lot. This is where we sort of use algorithms for to analyze data sets, and it learns over time. So the more and more data that we're able to feed machine learning algorithms, the better they get. Next into data analytics, so kind of a subset. Machine learning is often used as a subset of data analytics. Data analytics does not have to include AI, as we know. Analysis can be done in many other ways. Virtually everything we see now around the analytics world, we see AI referenced, but it doesn't have to include artificial intelligence. And then finally, generative AI. So what do we mean by generative AI? So it's gone a step further than just sort of normal AI in terms of the sensing, reasoning, and acting. And it actually optimizes results and improves performance over time by actually generating new ideas. So actually trying to improve, impart the creativity part of artificial intelligence. This really came to life last January when ChatGPT was released, and everybody realized that that was a slightly different way of engaging with artificial intelligence models. And I think that's really when generative AI started to become part of the normal rhetoric in everyday life. Next slide, please, Chris. So I was going to cover a couple of ways in which we're able to train AI models. So the first is reinforcement learning. So anybody who is a parent will be familiar with this mode of training. It's essentially providing rewards or incentivizations for an algorithm based on the actions it performs. And essentially, this is used by giving a reward based on an outcome. So in this case, if it was a baby, if you were trying to encourage the baby to crawl, you could perhaps have the feeder a certain distance away in a certain location, get the baby to crawl along to you, and then feed the baby. The baby gets what it wants. In a case where you perhaps didn't want it to move into a certain direction, you wouldn't provide a reward in that area, and instead you would ask it to come to a certain different area on the living room floor, for example. Doing this over and over again, sort of fairly brute force, is what we call reinforcement learning. And you see this a lot of the time used for training navigational robots in things like warehouses and manufacturing, etc. On the next slide, I've got a little sort of very basic video that I think kind of brings this to life. I'm not sure if we can play that, Chris. But this just shows a real life example of how this is done in kind of hopefully a slightly comedic way. Training a chicken in order to follow the pink mat. And every time that the chicken is able to follow the pink mat, it gets a little reward in the form of a treat. The way that we're trying to show here is distinguishing between the pink mat and following the blue mat. When it follows the blue mat, it doesn't get a reward, doesn't get a treat, and therefore is not interested at all in the blue or yellow mat and just purely follows the pink mat. So rather than it just identifying that it follows a circular shape on the table and that's what it's looking for, instead we're trying to distinguish and find a particular outcome, in this case a pink mat, and we reward the behavior as such, incentivizing that outcome. Sorry, that wasn't the best video to incorporate there. Chris, I think it's failing a bit, but hopefully people get the idea. Background noise, I'll just mute that participant. Thank you. Okay, so on to the next slide. So there's another kind of learning type, so unsupervised machine learning. So this is all about trying to find patterns within data sets. So what we do here is, rather than giving a sort of training data set and a labeled set, we're able to throw a data set at a machine learning algorithm, and the algorithm is able to cluster based on commonality between that data. So in this case, where we have geometric shapes, rather than telling the algorithm that we're looking for a circle, and this is all the different aspects of what a circle looks like, this is a triangle, we want you to try and find all of these triangles. Instead, we give it an unlabeled data set, in other words, sort of uncategorized, just a large data set to work on. It then runs that data set through the machine learning algorithm, and based on the commonalities between those geometric shapes, it's able to categorize really well. So this is done on things like when you get adverts that are targeted at you based on your other activity on the internet, etc. That's this kind of unsupervised machine learning algorithm. Like I say, really good for identifying commonalities, but can kick out some really spurious results as a consequence, because it doesn't really know that is a circle, that is a triangle, that is a hexagon. Instead, what it's doing is just finding commonalities in the shapes, and you can have some real spurious results as a consequence. The good thing about this mode of learning, sorry, I should just say before we move on very quickly, the good thing about this mode of learning is you do not need to have a labeled data set, which can often take a long time. And it does mean that it's sort of a fairly quick way to go about it, albeit that the quality of the outcomes can be slightly misleading. Next, on to supervised learning. So this is probably a fairly classic way that a lot of machine learning algorithms are trained currently, and especially in sort of new functionality. Has particular utility when you're looking to actually understand exactly what a data set is. So for example, in this case, we've got labels, so carrot, tomato, bell pepper, and we've got test data where we've been able to categorize each of those items. We then have a series of label data that we have essentially going to run through the model, and then based on that, it is able to categorize which category it falls into. This tends to get far better, more accurate results. The downside of this supervised learning training method is that it can be very, very time consuming. Providing labeled data can be a challenge, but also the test data, providing potentially upwards of 10,000 items of testing data, in some cases hundreds of thousands into the millions, can be extremely expensive. The good news is, over the past sort of 10 years, a lot of educational institutes, mainly universities, have been doing a lot of work in categorizing data, and now they are commercially available. So in some cases where you're looking to try and train an algorithm for something, you may not have to start from scratch. And in fact, you can utilize a lot of the good work that's been done in the academic arena and pay for some training data set to support your algorithm. Into the next slide, we've got some training model examples. So you can imagine that if you are trying to train a model to identify an aeroplane, there are very, very different shapes and sizes of aeroplanes. And what you need to do is you need to be able to identify it from various different angles, and you need to be able to identify the difference between, for example, a paper aeroplane and a Boeing 747 and everything in between. And so when we look to train these data sets, it's really important that you have a broad, varied data set, including lots of different angles, lots of different views, and making sure that you try to cover all aspects of those items. Otherwise, if the AI algorithm is exposed to something that it hasn't seen before or doesn't recognize, it will find it very difficult to categorize that as an aeroplane because it does not think in the same way that we humans do. The logic element of it, the sort of the creative side, if you like, often lags a little bit behind. So into the next slide, I've got an example of where training data sets are pretty important and where they can go potentially wrong. To us, hopefully, in this slide, it's fairly obvious which pictures here are dogs, which pictures are muffins, and on the right-hand side, which pictures are dogs and which pictures are mops. You can imagine, because of the commonality between a lot of the sort of geometry and the pixelation of these images, that to an AI algorithm, a lot of these things could look very, very similar. The only way we are able to make that determination, that distinction, is through the vast data that is used as part of the training data sets, but also the variety as well, to make sure that it's being able to see a lot of the different aspects and different variations, if you like, of what something can look for. Otherwise, you may end up with, like I say, the wrong results almost by accident. So once we've trained the AI model, we then go into something called fine tuning. So on the next example, we take these large data sets, we train them, and then we have our source model. We then use smaller data sets to then fine tune. So we feed those smaller data sets through the algorithm. We see how the algorithm performs, and then we fine tune to say yay or nay, that's right, that's not right, or I try to identify where it's gone wrong. We use something called, we also analyze the background effect. So frequently when you take images and try to train AI on certain images, sometimes it can recognize the item in the background of an image as being that itself, because it's just recognizing the full image rather than just the subject. So fine tuning plays a really important part in this process. And on the right hand side, you can see there where you've got a sort of section of tarmac or asphalt. There is cracking in that asphalt. You can imagine that things like brake lines or road markings or drains or gullies, they could potentially have sort of similar properties to a crack. How does an AI model identify the difference between an expansion joint in concrete, for example, and a crack? The only way we do this, again, is by having a very large and varied data set, but then critically try to fine tune. So in order for it to be good enough to do this, we actually had to train our AI model on over 110,000 images. So that was a lot of effort from colleagues, families, wives, kids, inputting certain data sets and labeling them correctly in order to get that sort of level of fidelity on that sort of data set, which to a normal human eye looks like a fairly basic thing to identify the difference in. That could be quite challenging for artificial intelligence. Okay, so into generative AI. So like I mentioned before, I think everybody's heard of ChatGPT. Hopefully most people have had to play around with it. There is a very large application landscape nowadays. You know, there's lots of different generative AI tools out there available to people. It's changing all the time. There seems to be a new product coming to market all the time, whether it be a brand new product or an upgrade on an existing. And I think from our perspective, something that we've been really keen not to do is try to duplicate effort in the marketplace. So where we see certain companies and certain organizations best placed to solve issues, we try to stay away from those and do a bit of a make-buy appraisal, if you like, and identify where we think the opportunities are that will be, or rather the challenges will be solved by industry. But then also looking critically is to say, where do we think the gaps may be that industry perhaps isn't solving, and where we need to really have a look, think about solving that challenge ourselves. We recently attended Autodesk University in Las Vegas, and we were talking to the head of AI for Autodesk, and we thought that artificial intelligence would have played quite a key part in their sort of product roadmap and thinking about prompt engineering for design, etc. That doesn't really seem to be something that they're considering at the moment. So I think to us as an industry, we really need to be thinking about this, and whether it's a bit of a gap that's something that we need to come together on to try and solve, because it feels like Bentley and Autodesk perhaps aren't thinking in that way from a design tool perspective, and actually there potentially is a gap in the generative AI market for some thinking around automated and AI assisted design. So into the next slide, I think something that's worth remembering is that as part of generative AI at the moment, we've got items like text generation, image generation as well. People may have seen the new releases recently where you can prompt the creation of new videos just by using text. I think something that's worth bearing in mind, though, is that when we use ChatGPT, really the real breakthrough there is the fact that it's a large language model. And by that, I mean that it can almost interact and communicate with us like a human. The actual information that it's providing to you isn't necessarily fact. It's been trained on a very, very large and diverse data set. That is one of the benefits of it. In fact, it used the internet for a lot of the training data. However, it still gets a lot of things wrong, and it can't think creatively. If it hasn't been trained on something, it can't come up with a solution. It can't sort of put that information together and use it as intelligence, if you like. It's really just conveying information that it's found from its training data set. So I think people have seen it as sort of like this oracle to communicate with. Really, the breakthrough there is actually how it communicates, and the fact it can communicate stylistically based on the training data, as opposed to the fact that actually it is some sort of super intelligence that we haven't experienced before. It's more of just a different way of engaging with the internet. I've got a slide next which kind of goes into a little bit more of an example of that. I mean, this was fairly early on in ChatGPT, but one of my colleagues asked it, what's heavier, a kilogram of helium or a kilogram of copper? And it identified that the kilogram of helium was lighter than copper. So obviously, it kind of got a bit mistaken here as to whether we were talking about volumes or mass, and talking about density of mass. I think just goes to show that in some cases, interaction with these AI tools can be incredibly valuable and very, very useful. However, sometimes it does get things wrong. We talk in our organization of thinking about generative AI, and particularly things like ChatGPT, as a really high functioning graduate or new sort of employee within the business. It can do a lot of work. It's available to you whenever you need it. It churns through a hell of a lot of information. It's really, really keen. It's always there when you need it. However, there are limitations to what it knows. And it really kind of is just regurgitating information as opposed to applying any knowledge or wisdom. And there will definitely be roles there into the distant future, I think, for providing that human expertise and human knowledge, and really using these tools and this technology as an extension of the human capability and expertise, as opposed to as a replacement for in some cases. There's no doubt about it that there's certain roles and certain jobs that will become redundant as a consequence of it. But I think we're perhaps going a step too far right now, thinking too far ahead into the future, that in the short or near term, that we will totally outdo the role of the human a lot of the time in this process. Okay, so next just to step into some ethical considerations. So I've mentioned a lot already about training data sets and how critical they are for optimizing and developing AI algorithms. Something that is really, really important to think about is when you are looking to train data sets, or when you're providing this information, there will innately be a bias in that. So this bias may be sectoral. So it may be for this group, that a lot of the data and input that you're providing with it is specific for defense. And it may be that is not applicable into other industries as a consequence. and the vice versa is true, of course, as well. It may be the fact that we all know that finding the real truth nowadays is probably more as difficult as any time. There is a lot of misinformation, disinformation available to us, and it's very, very readily available. How do we make sure that we mitigate that and stop training our models potentially on false information? Akin to that, as well as the data sets, we also need to think about diversity of developers as well. If you have a development community that is from one sort of aspect of the global community, if you like, just say middle-aged white males, you will innately have a bias from the development of that AI algorithm. It's really important, I think, more than ever, to really be considering how diversity, equity, inclusion actually plays itself and manifests itself into technology. We've seen this a little bit with some of the AI tools that have been released up to date. I think people might have seen some controversy when Google released their Bard platform, that it was very, very biased and actually trying to be almost woke. So you need to try and avoid that, but likewise, you don't want to have sort of innate prejudices built in. So one way to try and mitigate this is to have external validation. So as well as having model testing for bias within your own organization and really thinking about the sort of quality assurance procedure, making sure that actually you consider using a sort of independent external validator to run tests on your models and make sure that they're not diverging too far from either from truth or also thinking about testing for biases that are innate into them. We also need to think really as well as to how AI is motivated. So it is very, very good at following prompts and parameters and running those prompts to the extreme. There are examples, I think, that we should really be cautious about using AI for. I think it's clear to everybody that legislation and regulation is really lagging behind in this space, and it probably will continue to, because there just probably is not the competence or expertise within various governments to regulate this industry as well as it could do. So I suppose it's sort of, we have a bit of a fiduciary responsibility all of ourselves to make sure that we are using AI responsibly and in an appropriate manner. So as an example, I suppose an application where we perhaps wouldn't use it, the OxyContin crisis that is present in America, unfortunately, and you could see that the salespeople working for the pharmaceutical companies were incentivized to try and sell as many of these pills as possible, as opposed to sell them appropriately to the right people. You can imagine that if you set AI to task on this, that it could come up with a really compelling marketing campaign, perhaps totally immoral in the way that it was sort of trying to get people on the hook and trying to get people enticed into buying this product, but it would probably do a very, very good job at incentivizing people to purchase this. So in terms of it doing its job that it's being put to, if you like, i.e. sell more pills of opium, and it's done that very effectively. However, in terms of the sort of overall objective and the moral objective of what it's trying to achieve, an absolute fail. So we really need to be cautious of sort of thinking about how the AI is motivated, the prompts, the parameters that we set it, and how that may manifest itself down the line based on those inputs. So in order to manage ethical considerations, we need to consider risk management frameworks. So I've got that on the next slide. So I think more and more, a lot of the AI, sorry, just next slide, Chris, thank you. I think more and more with technology and the way that it's being sort of delivered within organizations, frequently this is a fairly bottom-up development. So you have people either at middle management level or people who are sort of deliverers on the ground who recognize the opportunities for implementing artificial intelligence and all sort of digital tools and technology to aid them in the job that they're doing. And then they frequently go with something like a business case to their more senior leaders to try and get buy-in and approval for implementing this technology. And then you go through sort of a commercial process, if you like, does it provide the return on investment, et cetera, et cetera. However, a bit of a word of warning to us all, really. I think we need literacy in data science, data management, data analytics right across all organizations. I think it's fair to say, with the way industry is going and data being such a crucial part of it, I think the more people that are literate, the better. I think from a senior leadership perspective, this probably needs to be enhanced and really needs to be thought of as almost like something that becomes a bit of a core skill for senior leadership teams to be considered, because the way in which we structure this could really impact the way the success or the, I suppose, the downfall of a potential organization in the way that they manage information and some of the AI tools that they're able to enact within organizations as well. Something that's really important is thinking about dedicating time to this, to consider the threats and opportunities of implementing this. So threats of implementing it, but also threats of not, and likewise the opportunities associated with it, and where you can really think about where is the need within your organizations for implementing tools like this, and how can you make the biggest impact, but also trying to minimize the risk of doing so at the same time. Performance and neutrality. So I've mentioned biases and making sure that you have neutrality and really testing against that, not just testing at the start, but AI tools tend to self-improve, and that's really important. So we need to make sure that we don't have sort of drift down the line, and really thinking about that external validation and testing tools, making sure that that's not just done at the outset or the release, but actually is done throughout the lifetime of the implementation of this software. And then finally, what standards do we think we should hold AI to? At the moment, it's very difficult to get any insurance against using AI tools and technology. Professional indemnity really sits, well, it's basically still on the individual and on people to make those calls. So at the moment, it's an AI is being used as a tool to support human validation, but actually can we get to a point where AI tools are trusted and critically insured to make those decisions for us, and really think about what's important to us is important around explainability. So for example, if you're looking to categorize some information, you may just want it to be pretty explainable, but not too worried about the performance of it, because it's going to inform an engineer or a worker, and then they can do the analysis and then provide the outcomes. Or in other cases, actually, are you optimizing for performance? And that is the most important thing. So for example, if I give 2 examples of that, explainability is really important for self-driving cars. If there's an accident, if there's an incident, we need to know why, and we need to be able to improve that. So having explainability built into the models is essential. Whereas if we think about using AI to try and detect cancers from certain scans, whether it be X-rays, MRIs, CAT scans, etc., really, we don't really care how it comes to the answer. All we care about is that it performs at the highest level possible, and that it tries to identify as many possible cancerous events as it can, as opposed to really understanding how did it make that determination. That's not really of interest to us. All we're really looking to do is optimize for performance. I think when it comes to legislation and regulation, the chances are that it will be that we try to hold AI to a sort of 10 times human capability performance standard. That surprisingly is probably not that far away. At the moment, we sort of shoot for 95%, 100% performance versus a human. But I think, in the not too distant future, we will see AI models optimizing way beyond that to capability that we probably haven't seen before, perhaps didn't anticipate. Okay, so the next section, I'm just going to talk through some examples of some AI tools and AI models that we've developed in-house and deployed for some of our clients. And then we'll move into the Q&A after this. So about 5-10 minutes left of what I'm going to be talking about today. So Rail AI, this is actually our first artificial intelligence model that we developed and deployed here at Tetra Tech a few years ago. Now, this technology is being used across the whole of North America, and it is a rail cart that has a whole array of sensors attached to it. So things like cameras, thermal imaging cameras, LiDAR, and ground penetrating radar. And what it does, it travels at normal sort of rail speeds up to sort of, I think, 50, 60, 70 miles an hour. And it is capturing data real time as it's doing that. There is a very powerful computer on board the rail carriage, and it is analyzing real time to identify any defects in the rail network, whether it be the ties, the actual rail itself, whether it be the sleepers, whether it be to do with the gravel embankments either side of it, etc. And it is identifying any issues. Now, all of the data analysis is done on board real time. And then if any defects or any issues are identified, it is then transmitted at the end of a sort of working day, if you like. It is offloaded from the Rail AI cart, and we produce an automated report to identify any issues over the stretch of rail that it's captured. Now, this has been a huge improvement in the way that this has been done previously. It's removed the need of a lot of data processing and a data for analysis, and it's proven to be really, really beneficial to our clients across the rail network. And it's something that we're looking to try and deploy in the UK as well. On to the next slide. Facade AI, this is something that we developed over the last couple of years. So we recognized that from an inspection perspective, whether it be buildings, bridges, whatever asset it may be, that a lot of the time is spent capturing the data, sure, but really people on site looking at buildings, looking at bridges, perhaps accessing them in potentially unsafe ways, whether it be rope access, and then analyzing all of the data, whether it be drone imagery, whether it be laser scan information, so point cloud from LiDAR, or whether it just be simple images taken from a camera, producing probably a fairly hefty written report, and then identifying any defects within the structures. So what we did was we came up with an automated way to ingest any kind of sort of visual information, whether it be from a UAV, from a static camera, or from LiDAR, and then identify defects in the sort of 13 categories on the right-hand side there, whether it be cracks, whether it be erosion, paint peel, efflorescence, but then also crucially, we identified expansion joints. So it wouldn't just identify that expansion joints were a defect, and instead it identified those as it being okay. And this has proven really, really beneficial for any asset that needs inspected, particularly on a routine basis. So the first use case we used for it, which is quite a neat one, was a very large bridge in Quebec, in Canada. And this bridge was past its design life. There was quite a lot of spalling on the brickwork pads, and people previously were accessing it by rope and doing inspections of those pads on a monthly basis. Instead of doing it that way now, we use a UAV to capture all of the imagery. We run it through Facade AI. We are able to identify the defects as a baseline that were already in the already in the pads, and then identify any expansion or manifestations of those defects as a consequence of time. And you can see that as a function of time within the software, and you're able to see the various different progressions within those defects. That then automates a report, and then we're able to sort of drive data-driven decision making as a consequence of that, in terms of the maintenance, upkeep, or potential closure of that bridge if the defects get any worse. Next one, slightly different example, more into the sort of natural environment, natural world. So this was in the state of New York, and there was an invasive species survey required of over 3,000 lakes, and this was for the Nature Conservancy. They only had something like 30 people in state, so doing a survey of over 3,000 lakes just was not viable, was not really plausible. And so what we were able to do, using a variety of different data sets, satellite imagery, publicly available data sources, we were able to make predictions on the likelihood of invasive species being in those lakes, and vastly reduce the number of lakes that actually needed to be sampled and inspected in person. So we went from a series of 3,000 down to only 50 lakes that ended up needing to be sampled by those employees, and be able to do a far more sort of complete, if you like, inspection of those lakes for the invasive species, rather than trying to do all 3,000. And this obviously has utility right across the board, where at the moment, if we have to do things in a fairly manual way, it often means that we're having to cover a very, very large amount of sites or data. And instead, by utilizing AI in this way, we can really reduce the number of sites that we need to visit, and vastly reduce the cost and time associated with undertaking this kind of work. Another one, which is linked but slightly different, is Blackwater river systems. So again, using multispectral imagery data sets, as well as a bit of satellite imagery as well, we were able to identify potential Blackwater river systems in the US. So this is something that is a fairly unique environmental phenomenon. Doesn't happen all the time, fairly unusual, mainly caused by sort of dead leaves in water systems. But poses great issues to the sort of local wildlife and ecological system. Again, rather than having to do a whole sort of sweep of these areas, you can see there in sort of like the panhandle region of the United States. Instead, we were able to very much apply sort of a risk-based approach, only go and subsample a few areas that we actually identify these issues, by basically excluding a vast number of river systems as a consequence of the analysis that was all done by artificial intelligence and these publicly available data sets. Next, a bit of a tragic incident that occurred in Canada on one of the rail networks over there. So they have a real flooding issue where they have very heavy downpours. They have flooding on the rail, and it can cause crashes such as this. This was a freight train that was traveling along a Canadian railway, and unfortunately, because of one of the washouts, it crashed. There was a fire. I think there was potentially people injured. Well, I think people were seriously injured as a consequence, and it had a very, very high sort of dollar cost as well. We were asked by the rail network operator whether using AI analysis, we could have predicted the washout, predicted the issue on the network, and ultimately avoided this incident occurring. So what we did was we took some satellite information from this time that was available through our satellite imagery providers. We ran it through our AI flooding analysis tool, and you can see there on the right-hand side at the bottom that we were able to identify, using, again, that was all done autonomously, not through human intervention, but we were able to identify that there was water on the tracks, there was a washout, and actually there was a flood, and that we would have advised that the journey had been cancelled and not gone via this route, thus saving the injury and obviously the freight and ultimately the cost of that impact. So I think this just goes to show that by using these systems, we're able to start predicting outcomes as opposed to reacting to the outcomes that occur. And again, that's just through a lot of this data that's available commercially and publicly, but just running it through the correct analysis tools that we've managed to develop, and then automating alerts based on that. And the area we're covering now on behalf of this client is 350,000 square kilometers, which you can imagine from a sort of human intervention, people intervention perspective would be an enormous task, but instead we're able to do that just using AI. And the final example, which is kind of one of my favorites actually, it was a cool example over in Africa where we work with USAID a lot, and you can imagine that sort of grain and harvest support, when they have issues to do with their harvest and we need to support them from a nutrition perspective, that is subject to a lot of corruption. And frequently when you have grain in grain stores and things like that, it can be subject to people stealing them, or even perhaps holding up certain stores and stealing some of the inventory. We were able to design an AI tool that allowed you, just using imagery, to identify all of the sacks, categorize it by the type of what it was holding, identify those as individual unique sacks by some of the markings that were on them, not using things like barcode scanners or QR code scanners, just some of the unique markings that were on them, and then also identify condition and crucially quantity. And this meant that we had, through very, very low tech, i.e. just a camera, we were able to suddenly have a sort of full inventory tracking system on the type, quantity, characteristics, condition of all of that inventory within these stores. And you can imagine that this is over many, many stores, over many countries, right across the continent. This was something that had a really big impact, again, using fairly low technology in terms of hardware, but quite advanced technology in the software side to really aid in this process and support that program. So they were all of the examples that I wanted to share. I was going to turn it over to Q&A now. I think just probably sort of closing comments from me would be that in the sort of design and engineering space, we're very much looking at opportunities to introduce AI to support the engineering process. It's easy, I think, for all of us to think quite big and quite broad, and we recognize a lot of different opportunities that we have within the sector. At the moment, with the way AI models are developed, it's easier to identify single deliverable use cases and solve those and come up with models to help with those use cases, rather than trying to be too broad and too diverse and actually almost trying to eat the elephant all at once and it become a bit of a beast. So I'd really recommend that when anybody's thinking about this, you really think about what is an impactful use case where it's perhaps you utilize a lot of human intervention at the moment. It's perhaps quite repeatable because AI tends to do very well with repeatable tasks where it can use logic, and think about the opportunities of how you could potentially train a model and implement a model, whether it be existing in industry or something that you develop in-house, to solve that problem and provide efficiencies and hopefully more value to the tasks that you're undertaking. That's me.
Alex, wonderful presentation. Thank you for that. I think the words you just shared, even just doing the initial kind of rundown on introducing us, or at least giving that initial baseline on AI, which hopefully everybody on the call, that wasn't the first time that they've heard some of that, but I realize that in some cases that might be the case. And I think this is really a great opportunity for those of us, and this was kind of the idea when we set this up, was to establish for all of us a bit of a base on AI, because this is not going away. And I think for all of us, again, that are in the profession, this is only going to become more and more important as we go forward. I really was caught by your comment around kind of those in leadership needing to carve out time to understand more. I think in industry, I know certainly within Jacobs, that is something that's being pushed out. I've been involved in several conversations. This just came up yesterday in some meetings I was in. So I think, again, for those of us that are in the industry, whether you're private sector or even in public sector, this is going to only increasingly become more and more important. So let's see if anyone out there, we've got a lot of very intelligent and interested people that are on the call. So it would be absolutely wonderful if we could get some questions going. I am going to take the first one that Matt typed into the window here. And he's asking, can AI be used to convert survey or GIS data from geospatial project plus datum to another? GIS data from one geospatial project projection to another. So hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully, Matt, I got that correct.
It does make sense. And Matt, thank you for opening with a geospatial question that I can answer. Yes, in short, yes, absolutely it can. Esri, we use Esri a lot from our GIS perspective. There are obviously other providers out there as well, but there is facility now to use AI within the Esri stack. And we do that, and we frequently convert projections from one to another using that function. So yes, absolutely something that can be done.
Great question. Matt, thanks for that. Anyone else on the world there have a question? Got an expert here, so let's go ahead and use them. While we're waiting for people to think through those, and I'm probably going to start going through and just asking people to call them out, because this is again, the importance for us as a professional profession, I think, is important for us to be thinking through all these. Alex, one of the ones that keep coming up for me is around the legal risks associated with the utilization of AI. So you shared a number of examples that Tetra Tech is actively using right now today. It's really more of in the kind of predictive modeling and kind of assessing, as opposed to actual generative AI, where some of us have seen presentations on this where we've got startup companies that are actually doing structural design. Give me a 5-story building and it spits it out. I'm curious though, even with the use that Tetra Tech has, do the clients care that you're using AI, or are they only concerned about the output? And from a corporate or a company perspective, and I don't say you necessarily, but does your company think that it needs to inform a client that it's utilizing AI? And granted, there's probably marketing purposes for doing that, but from a legal, ethical, or just risk mitigation perspective, do you feel that there's a need to inform your client that you're utilizing AI even for these types of kind of assessments?
Yeah, I think that's a great question, Chris. So I think it's an obligation now that you've got to say the letters AI before everything that we talk about in industry, that, I'm using AI in this space. But so we're always extremely transparent with that, making sure that our clients fully understand that we are using AI models where we are. I would say 99 times out of 100, that is met with a very positive response from them, and they see it as a positive thing that, you're forward thinking, you're utilizing technology in the way that we would hope you would be. Some clients do want to understand a little bit more as to, okay, tell me a little bit more. What's the model? Where is the model hosted? How is the model developed? What training data set have you used, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is, because insurance hasn't caught up yet, and I think it will, but it hasn't yet, any analysis and any generative AI that we use for undertaking tasks really has to be substantiated with the human kind of checking and approval, if you like, in the sort of ISO 9001 terminology, to make sure that we meet the obligations of our insurances. So yes, we're very transparent. Yes, we see it as important to tell clients, and yes, clients are very interested and keen on us using them. But ultimately, I think until it's insured, we'll still have to rely upon sort of checking and approval at a human level.
Yeah, Alex, great. Thank you. I appreciate that. That's good. Good answer. Let's see. I'm going to go first to Brent. I saw his hand come first. Then we'll take the one from Matt, and then to Frank, and we've got another one in here from Ken, which I think is a really good one. So, Brent, why don't you go ahead if you can come up off mute and ask a question.
Excellent, thank you. Yeah, and sorry for maybe a poorly phrased thing. I didn't want to lose the opportunity to ask the questions. So the thought is, I've toyed around with it a little bit. I've investigated some of it in the large language models and the golems and all the stuff. I think there's a little bit of we don't know what's possible yet in a lot of ways, especially at my end user status here of can't even dream of things that are possible. So the big question is, what is available to us at the government? What are we pooling those resources? Are we trying things out in ways that are directly applicable and useful, meaningful, realistic, and all the rest of it without a big disruption or turning this into a multi-year campaign of trying to create new software or whatever it is, because that was pretty impressive what you're doing with the trains and the water stuff. So I guess if you could just talk a little bit around that of what's available to us now, what we could use almost immediately. I think I even saw somebody ask something similar to that. So again, I'm kind of broad, but yes, distinct examples of kind of where we can do it, especially in the Air Force and available to us. So I'll end it there. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, thanks for that question, Brent. So I think it's quite a broad question, and maybe it would be wrong of me to say here's 3-4 tools that I think you could use tomorrow. I think probably maybe I'll talk a little bit about the process that I would go through when considering that. So I think really thinking about what are your objectives and goals that you're trying to achieve. Based on that, where on the operations and tasks that we're undertaking, where are the inefficiencies that we see at the moment? What things causes problems? Where do we feel like it's quite attritional? Where do we think we're perhaps a little bit heavy in terms of the human intervention side? Consider all of those aspects of things and then come up with almost like a problem statement or a functional requirement. And then based on that problem statement or functional requirement, allow industry to solve that problem for you. So there may be something that's off the shelf that they have existing, or it may be something that needs to be developed. But I think if we think in sort of like the traditional way of specifying and procuring works, we specify down to these are the requirements. This is what I need as my data to be handed over. These are the deliverables. This is the tolerance that I require. Maybe think a little bit more about functional requirements and problem statements to allow for that innovation. And for people to bring forward sort of new ideas, new ways of thinking to the table. In terms of things that you could implement now that will be off the shelf, there's bound to be plenty of opportunities for you to do that. It just depends, not fully understanding exactly where the lens which you're looking through, but would be happy to have a conversation with you about that further if it's something you're interested in more specifically.
And Alex, I'll tag on there because I wrote a note down here. I think what I'll do, and Brent, this might get to your question about it's part of it. I think is what's available out there that's a commercial off the shelf product, for lack of a better term, application maybe is a better term, in industry right now. Because to your point, I think sometimes it's like I don't even know what question to ask because I don't know what's available. So we've got several sustaining member firms that I suspect, because I know the one that I'm within, has a very robust utilization of these systems. That may be something that we can do is pull that together. Kevin or Tom, if you're taking notes like I know you always do, would be useful for us maybe just to tag up. We can get back to all of our sustaining member firms and maybe try to collate a listing of kind of commercial off-the-shelf AI tools that are already existing and that might be helpful. Brent, would that be something like that be useful?
Absolutely. I appreciate that, because I think, just to reiterate, it's even to know what we can think about. And so I love the idea of developing the problem statement and stuff, but to even, if we were looking at how SharePoint can kind of, it's not AI necessarily, it's these workflows that you can create. But if you don't even know that exists and you don't know what it can do, you don't even know to ask the question, right? It's the unknown. And so to see something where it can start, and then to talk to people who have used some of this stuff and say, oh, I've got a solution to that problem that you have, knowing that maybe that problem, you thought it was intractable, you thought it was something you couldn't even be defined, turns out that maybe so I'll leave it at that. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Yeah, and I'll look forward to that information.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll get that compiled, and we'll make sure it gets shared out to you and the rest of the membership. I will just real briefly, because it kind of goes into the tools in the realm of what's possible. There's a question in here from Ken asking around AI tools that can help with just basic administrative tasks like taking minutes generation from Teams. Ken, I'll tell you that I just discovered, Alex, I don't know if it's in Tetra Tech, but Jacobs several months ago rolled out Microsoft Copilot internal. There's a data categorization issue that's got to come up with that in your own organization, such as now every time I send an email or save a document, I have to notify, is it publicly releasable, is it internal, proprietary, because the AI model internally will look at those documents. Specific to meetings, this call today is being recorded. There's also a transcript that's being generated in the background. When this is all done, utilizing Copilot, which is part of a Microsoft suite of tools, you can go through and ask it to do summaries. Please provide me a summary of the call and give me a list of all action items. And I've been using that now for the last month. And by and large, I've stopped using that little device and a piece of paper. So the question maybe back to you, Ken, is whether Mod has allowed Copilot to be installed on your system. So that's one idea. I'll just kind of leave it at that. I don't know, Alex, if you've got any ideas, or if that's something that you find in Tetra Tech. Are you guys using Copilot as well?
Yeah, fully endorse your answer there, Chris. Totally agree. Yeah.
Okay. There's also another one. If you're on, I can't really see them. There we go. Mobile phone. There's an app. I will say that you've got to pay for it, but again, you always have to tell people you're recording, even on the transcript, because that's just the right thing to do. But there is an app out there. I'm using a program called Otter on my phone. It has exceptionally good quality of taking the transcript, and the same thing you can do. Provide me a list of key points and tasks, and it does a pretty decent job of it. Let's go to Frank, who's been very patient with his hand up, and then we've got another question that's in the chat window from Olivia. Matt, I think I might have skipped you, so let's do Frank. We'll go to you, and then we'll take Olivia's question. So Frank.
Yeah. Thank you, Chris. Great program here, and thank you, Alex, for your presentation. Yeah, this goes along the lines of just, I guess, kind of hashing through a lot of information. I spend my time in military master planning, Lawrence Frank with Atkins Realis, and just usually there's multitude of documents to kind of try to hash through in a short period of time to get up and running. And I'm just wondering, one, if you have seen a successful application of AI to, if you give it some things to look for to help kind of pinpoint more critical data. And it's not a substitute for, going back through it yourself, but just to help kind of prompt to more important sections and make sure, your search is thorough. And two, it gets into that, where does this get released? Does it end up, we don't want these to go to the public realm. Is there a way to sort of safeguard that and keep it just, within the organization that's doing the work? Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, great question. So if I maybe give an example of ourselves, what we're doing at the moment in that space. So contract reviews. When we get contracts from clients that we need to review, analyze, and see whether there's anything nasty in there that we need to try and negotiate out. So our first pass of contracts very shortly is going across this new application where we do exactly that. And so when you were saying analysis of documents there, Lawrence, and thinking about the key items that you would like it to look for, you essentially set a series of prompts to say, look for this, look for this, look for this, look for this. It then analyzes all of the documents, supposing that they're machine readable, and you're able to pull that information out. On the flip side, you can also do the opposite and sort of say, give me a summary of the document or a suite of documents there. Pull out the salient items, the things that you deem to be important, and it'll give you it in a sort of bullet point list or whatever, however you would like to engage with that information, whether you prefer prose or if bullets are more kind of what you're looking for. To your second question about how do you do it in a way that's secure. So something that's really important, if you use ChatGPT for anything, you are then training the model yourself with the additional information that your questions you're asking, but also the feedback you're giving it, whether you're saying, yes, that was right, or when you're sort of fine tuning a question, sort of saying, could you expand on that, or could you give me a little bit more information here? You are innately training that model as you utilize it. So in the secure space, which I think it's fair to say probably everybody on this call is in, it's really important that that's not the case, and that information that you use to analyze is not then retraining the model, because that would probably, well, almost definitely break any security protocols. So what we do is we train a model on a data set that is appropriate and that we're able to do so. And then once that model has been trained, we airlock it from being trained by input data. And so that the input data, all you're doing is analyzing it and using the already trained AI algorithm, but it isn't then self-training on that data. So that data that you enter into the AI model, whether it be generative or otherwise, is not then feeding back into the sort of master data set, if that makes sense.
Great, thank you.
Alex.
Yeah.
Yeah, Lawrence, apologies, Lawrence. It's my
no worries. I got two first names. Yeah.
Well, yeah, but this is my large language learning today has been, I've got names in here in the chat, or the chat in the window in here, and some of them are first, last. Anyway, that's my I apologize for that, but thanks for the question. Let's go to Matt, and then we've got a question that's in the chat window from Olivia, which I think is a really good one about IP. So Matt, I thanks for being patient. You said you had another question with the group there.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Courtney Morgan. Thanks, Chris and Alex, for the presentation. Just here as a guest, so to speak. A lot of the larger hitters like Apple and X are utilizing their AI to train or bounce training data off of each other to, I guess, limit the training time. Do you see a point where models will be able to be trained up fairly quickly instead of over 20,000 iterations or a couple of 12,000 iterations? One system will train another, so to speak. Over.
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure is my honest answer. What I think is that at the moment, data sets and saying 20,000 of this, 100,000 of that, or a million, labeled images or whatever it may be, is a very daunting prospect. I think in society as a whole, we recognize that data is critical. And I think the way in which we collect data a lot of the time is not as efficient as it could be, whether it be in the way that we structure that data or labeling the data correctly. With associated attribution or metadata. I think over the next 5 to 10 years, that will really change, because people are recognizing the fact that that needs to change to make the most of the data sets that people are holding. Once you do that, I think the training of data sets on some large numbers becomes a little bit less daunting. The other thing is that more and more data sets and training data sets are being developed all the time. I mentioned academia. That's also the case in the commercial space as well. And so frequently you can buy these data sets and you can do it that way. There's a lot of cross-model training going on at the moment, so self-optimizing that way. Whether that reduces the need in some cases for the amount of input data, I'm not sure. That's something that we'll have to sort of see where that goes. Perhaps somebody else with more expertise could answer that better than I.
Thank you.
That was a good question. Yeah, I'm glad you were on the call to take that one, Alex. So we have another written question in here from Olivia, which I think is a really good one. If you picked it up already, it's when you generate the AI model, who owns it from an IP standpoint, intellectual property standpoint?
Yes, very, very good question. So IP, when it comes to AI, is an interesting one. So the IP is owned by whoever develops a model. The thing that the question is what counts as IP, if that makes sense. So if you think about an algorithm essentially being an equation, you cannot trademark or copyright or patent or own the IP for an algorithm. For an equation, essentially, like a mathematical equation. That's not something that you can protect in terms of IP. The way in which you use that equation and the data sets that you've labeled, the application of it, that's something that is intellectual property, and that would sit with whoever's generated that AI model. Or obviously you could have a share, say that a client's funding it, and there wants to be in the contract agreement there's agreement of shared IP. That's a different set. But it's actually one of the sort of grand challenges, if you like. So if we take Tesla as an example, as one of the largest AI companies in the world, their full self-driving capability, their machine learning algorithm that they've got for that, the algorithm itself is probably in a text file, and that text file is probably something like 140 kilobytes or maybe a megabyte, and that is that's their sort of secret source. It's very, very small, but that's an equation they've developed. Really, the importance or the true IP that they would own is actually how you apply that algorithm using the various different weighting biases, the data sets that they've got, the way in which they interpret that data. So I think it's when we split those things into the sort of fundamentals as to what they are, the constituent parts, that's what we need to consider. So sometimes I think people think that the algorithm, the equation itself is the IP. That is not, because it can't be protected in that way. It's the application of it. But that very much sits, like I say, with the person or the organization who develops that, unless there's a contractual agreement otherwise.
Alex, that's thanks for sharing that. That was a really important question. That's actually some of what the discussion internal to my company was yesterday, was around the ownership of some of the IP, which is a extremely important thing when it comes to business to business, but even business to government, et cetera. Well, Alex, thank you. We're going to let you off the hook now. Wonderful presentation. Thanks for sticking with us for the question and answer period. Hopefully that was good for you as well. For those of you that who have stuck on throughout the entire call, thank you. Hopefully you found this to be useful and interesting. If so, we really greatly appreciate you. If you haven't already, go and you're on LinkedIn, please go out, join the SAME Europe Region SAME site, and you'll find the post in there about today's presentation. It'd be wonderful to see your comments if you appreciated it. Clearly, by virtue of the fact of who's stuck on and some people that dropped and came back in, Alex, this was found to be a very interesting topic. So we're going to have you back. Maybe it'll be 12 months from now. I think that may be worthwhile to just let's take a pulse and see where industry has moved, where all of us have moved in our AI journey over the next coming, let's say, year, and we'll definitely be reaching out to you to bring you back on as a presenter. So again, thank you for your time.
My absolute pleasure. Really enjoyed it. Thank you very much, everybody.
Yeah. So everyone else, thank you for joining in. This was a good show for good showing for the first one of these presentations. Like I said, if you did find this interesting, please go out and join the LinkedIn site. Leave a comment. Let us know what you thought of the presentation, and more importantly, and equally importantly, I guess I'll say, is please go and take a couple minutes, fill out the survey that we provided to you, and the link is out there, and we'll make sure that we can adjust our program as we go forward through the rest of the year to make sure that we are ticking the boxes for what you're looking for, both in professional development and in the socializing. With that, we are going to wrap up the end of the call here. Again, thank you very much. Wish you a wonderful rest of your Wednesday. The recording for this will be posted out again on one of our YouTube sites. Make sure that you can share that along with everybody else. We'll also check with Alex, but I think he's going to be okay with it. We can share out the slides on this as well. We'll get those posted, and hopefully you found this interesting. And look forward to seeing you at the end of June at the upcoming IGE event, and we'll be sharing more information about that as we move forward. With that, have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.